Hi, it's Allison from the Law School Toolbox. Today we're excited to have ex-BigLaw recruiter Sadie Jones with us to talk about managing your schedule as a summer associate or other summer intern, or really any type of intern or extern. Welcome, Sadie.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Well, I think this is such an important topic because students working in a summer job or really even a semester-long internship or externship often have no idea how long things will take. I mean, how would they? They've never done any of this before. So it can be really tricky to get what I would say is the right level of work. Do you agree with that?
I completely agree, and it's understandable, and I don't think anyone should feel like they're alone in this. Probably anyone who starts is going to feel this way.
Yeah, so what are some mistakes that you've seen in this area?
So I think there's, two sides of the coin, taking on too much work, taking on too little work, having to say no to people and turn things down because you have too much. And another big problem is leaving things unfinished at the end of the summer.
True, that's very true. Yeah, I had the problem of people getting upset when I had to say no at one of my summer jobs where I was in a completely impossible position, basically. And I had two partners who already thought I was both working full-time for them, and then someone else wanted my time. And the firm was like, well, just go tell them you can't do that. And I'm like, I don't feel like that's going to go very well. And it did not go well.
I think especially with partners, they sort of forget that you're working with other people. Like they're
Right.
only focused on their situation and they sort of feel like you're a summer associate, you should have time, and they don't necessarily realize what's going on outside of their assignment.
Right, I agree. They can be kind of very focused. So what should be the goal here?
Basically, to find the middle ground of having enough work to keep you busy and feel like at the end you have a good amount of work product to show them, and to kind of keep everyone happy and comfortable. And to communicate, I think, is a big thing. To learn that skill, I think, is something you can get out of this.
I agree. I think it's a two-part problem. One is kind of figuring out how long things are going to take, how much time do you have, how many hours are you willing to devote? Do you want to be working 40 hours a week or 60 hours a week or 80 hours a week as a summer? Hopefully not the latter part of that. And the second part, which I think you make a great point on, is how do you communicate that? I mean, the goal, if somebody comes and asks me to take on a project, I think the default should be to say yes. Do you agree with that?
I agree. I mean, I definitely don't think you should be picky and like
Right.
trying to turn things down. As a summer, you should get a mix of projects. And that means even saying yes to things that don't immediately sound good to you or aren't necessarily in an area that you're interested in, because maybe it's a chance to work with someone different or get some experience. So I think, you should view this summer as a chance to learn new things, get new experience. So you should be trying to take things on. I agree, especially if someone comes to you. That's, not necessarily how all assignments are going to happen. But if they're coming to you, you should want to take it.
How can people get to yes when they have maybe some competing demands? If you're working on a different project or whatever it is.
Well, I think this is a chance to get a good idea of how long the different things that you have take and when they're due, because it's both of those aspects. It's how many hours, but also when it's due, because maybe you have, ideally some long-term projects, some short-term projects, and you should be able to kind of weave those together where, they're not all due at the same time. They're not all taking the same amount of time. And I do think this is a chance to talk to a summer mentor or somebody there that's on the summer committee or the recruiting manager. And if you're not sure what to do, kind of lay it out for them with as much detail as you can. And, maybe they can help you problem solve a little if you're not totally sure how it's all going to work.
Right. And I think sometimes you can kind of not play people off each other, but if maybe you're not sure if you can say yes, so you can say something like to the person who's asking you, well, I'd really love to work with you on this project. It sounds really fantastic. I do have some other commitments to partner X. How do you want me to handle that? Or something along those
Absolutely.
lines.
Absolutely. And that's so much better than what I think a lot of summers do, which is hide things, not want to tell people the truth. It's almost like they don't want the person to know they're working for other people, like, they're gonna make them feel bad. It's sort of like when someone turns you down and you ask them where they accepted their offer and they don't wanna tell you. It's not because we're taking it personally, it's just because we want the data. So it's totally fine to say that, and so the reality here that I don't think people will tell you is there are people that are more important at a law firm than other
Right.
people. That's something that a lot of people won't say explicitly, but I'm gonna tell you that explicitly. And if it's a senior partner or it's head of the group or something, I do think you need to prioritize them. And it doesn't mean you drop a project that you were working on for someone else that you already had. It means you need to figure out a solution. And if that other project could be due later or could be extended or something, that you need to think about who these people are, and there is a hierarchy.
I agree. And I think sometimes it may be that, you might need to put in some extra hours for a few days to get something done so that you can say yes to this other project. And sometimes summers, I think, feel like, oh, well, if I have to stay past 5 or 6, like I should never do that. I will tell you, I was working until 3 or 4 in the morning on a weekend the first week I worked at a law firm as a summer. So those things do happen. And I
But
think
we don't want
no, of
like summers
course.
to feel like they have to do that. That seems unfortunate.
I mean, it was a crazy place. And that was also the place that basically didn't make an offer because I couldn't work for their other partner. It was not a great fit. But the point being, I think there's a balance here, and it may be that you need to do a few extra hours in the evening for a few days to get something done so that you can say yes to someone who, for example, is the head of the group that you want to work in. So I think it's a balance. And of course, you shouldn't be working like 100 hours a week. And if that's happening, you need to talk to someone. But I think there's also an opportunity to, put in a few extra hours and get some stuff done.
I will say when I've seen situations like what you're saying where someone is working a crazy amount, it's rarely somebody else's fault. It's usually because the summer associate actively took on too
Oh, I
much.
don't know about that. That was not the case here.
Well, your situation sounds unique. It's not what I've seen. And it was a while ago, so some of this stuff has sort of changed in terms of how they do summer assignments and things like that.
I had to miss my own birthday party. I would not have done that voluntarily.
I would be really upset if I were in charge of a summer program and found out that that had happened. And we would do something to fix that. That's not the impression the firm wants to give.
Right.
Generally, I guess this firm did.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, it didn't work out. So probably that was not the impression they wanted to have either.
But I will say 95% of the time where I've seen this happen, and it doesn't happen that often, it's because the summer somehow agreed to a lot of things. Maybe they had longer deadlines, and so they all came due at the same time, kind of just said yes to everything. I've even seen people seek it out, where people aren't coming to them, but they're taking all of these assignments on the portal in a row because they think it'll be impressive. So you have to take responsibility for the part that you can control. This isn't a situation where you just want to collect as many assignments as possible. That's not getting you any points. Doing, a good amount of work to keep you busy. That's kind of different types of work. Having enough written work product at the end. That's all important. But being the summer that took on the most assignments is not a reward that's given.
No, that makes sense. So under what circumstances do you think people should just say no, and how can they do that gracefully?
If it's someone that you feel like you cannot say no to, I do think that's a time to bring somebody else in, like I mentioned, a mentor, someone on the committee. And maybe you need to say, the senior partner came to me. I have something due, and this is an immediate assignment. I have to say no. I'm not sure what to do. So you can ask for advice if it's a specific person where you feel uncomfortable. But I think it's completely fine to explain to them why you need to say no right now, because you have, let's say, 2 assignments due this week that, are going to take the entire full days. You want to make sure you do a good job. And then I think you say you would love to take on another assignment from them after this is over. I think the best scenario is that you still try to work with them, and that will leave them with the impression that you weren't blowing them off.
I think that's right. All right. Well, what if I'm not sure if I have time? Having never done this, how can people figure out how long a new assignment should take or will take?
Well, the first thing is to ask. Now, potentially it's listed. If it's something that you took on the portal, a lot of times it will have like a number of hours that the assignment is. When you get the assignment, you should ask for a time amount. And that's really important because some of these assignments could take 5 hours, they could take 20 hours, and maybe they want you to spend 5 hours on it. In theory, you could spend an unlimited amount of time on anything. So
True.
I think it's important to know what they want, especially if it's going to be billed to a client. I think that you should use all the tools that they give you to track your time to get an idea of how long different tasks are taking. And you can get examples. You can talk to other people about how long different things that you're working on should take, will take, because that's always good. Sometimes we would notice that a summer was just taking way too long on a task that should take an hour and they were taking 5. And then we would talk to them, what are you doing? And kind of find out and just let them know that they're just spending too much time. They're going in too much detail. That's not what we're looking for here. I also think that you can kind of start at the higher level. You can always get more into the nitty gritty and spend more time on it. And you may want to go back to the person giving you the assignment and say, okay, here's what I did in 5 hours. I could spend more time on it. Do you want me to?
Right. Are there specific things you'd like me to follow up on? And if so, then find out, okay, how much time do you want me to spend doing that follow up? I think staying in contact with people is really the most important thing you can do here, and understanding the assignment from the get-go. You should always know if this is billable, what the numbers you're using are for billing things, and what their general impression of how long this might take should be. And also, just as an aside, how much legal research time you're allowed to burn as well.
That's such a good point. And I just think there is such a variety on how long these things take for different people. You really should be clear also. So it's great if you come to the assignment meeting with a notebook, you're writing things down, you're asking questions. Then you might go back and there's some questions that come up. What's really important is that there's just one other meeting or one other interaction. If you can do that, where you ask everything, it really bothers people if you keep coming back to them every hour with another question
True.
about what this assignment is. So I think that's an important part of this. Figure out if you can from the beginning, can I put this all into one email and get this all back?
Right. And I think sometimes it's helpful too to summarize things from the meeting. So as I understood it, this is what you're looking for, bullet point, bullet point, bullet point, and send them that email. And then it's documented. And if it turns out that, they thought they said 5 hours and you thought they said 25 hours and you wrote 25 in the email and they never said anything else, then it's like, well, you know what? This is what it sounded like to me we agreed on. And they didn't contradict that. So, but I
I
agree.
agree. And also that you can write what the assignment's supposed to be billed to. That would be great to put in that email too, in case there's any issues there.
Yeah, I think it's just a little bit of CYA, which I think people aren't necessarily used to doing, but lawyers love to do.
Yeah, it's rampant.
Yeah, the lawyer, let me summarize the meeting in an email to you is a pretty common tactic in the law firm world.
But be careful because you don't want it to look like that. You don't want it to look
not
like
at
a
all.
CYA. And if you do make it look like that, you'll get a reputation. So just make sure it seems sort of casual.
Yeah, and you want it to sound helpful.
Yeah, exactly.
Basically,
I'm just making sure we're on the same page.
Yeah, I just want to summarize my understanding to make sure that I'm not missing something.
I
or
agree.
whatever. You take the responsibility, but really it's the CYA. Yeah, so the other thing I think people can kind of look at in terms of, do they have time is what does your calendar tell you? Have you added all of your non-negotiable activities to your schedule? Well, what time is left? So what in the law firm world summer program, what would be some non-negotiable activities that you probably ought to be attending that should be on your calendar?
The actual firm events should be non-negotiables. And I
Yes.
know that doesn't sound like it is. I feel like some summers think that's optional, but it's not. You should go to all of them unless you have a serious conflict or problem. Any trainings. So anything that they tell you is part of the summer program is a non-negotiable. Things like lunches are obviously extra, but if it's a lunch with your partner mentor, that's a non-negotiable.
Right. I think training lunches too, sometimes people I think those are not that big a deal and they might even RSVP and then not show up. That is not a thing to do.
No, if you RSVP, you need to go to whatever it is, even if it's not, and then it becomes a non-negotiable. For example, they bought a table at a charity event and you said you would go. You have to go. You're
Right.
gonna
That
have to
looks
work
so
around that.
bad. It looks
But
so
I
bad
can't
if
believe
people
how
don't show
often
up.
that happens.
I've been one of the people at the table when people didn't show up, and the partner who bought that is just like fuming mad by the end of
Oh,
the
and they're
event.
gonna know who you are.
Oh, yeah.
Like, even if they didn't know, they're gonna find out your name.
Oh, exactly. They're going to know. They're like, who was it that basically humiliated me in public?
Yeah.
'Cause
So
that's
all
what
of
it
that
is.
all of that should be on your calendar, and you have to work around that. Now, your personal activities are not non-negotiable unless you cannot get out of them, like you don't have childcare and you have to go home, or there's a wedding, but you having drinks with your friends or whatever normal social activities, those aren't non-negotiables.
Right. I think, some things you may need to do, like a medical appointment or something, but you should try to schedule that on a time that you are pretty sure is going to be less busy if you really have to do it over the summer.
And I was going to say, I think it's important to try to schedule those before and after. The summer programs are short, really, in the scheme of things, and they're paying you to be there and be available, and it is a job interview. So you should try to make sure they're your priority if you can.
I agree. And I think just getting used to calendaring things and paying attention to your calendar are really critical skills that people can carry forward even after the summer.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the best way to really see in black and white where, you actually have time. And then you can start slotting in based on how long these different things are going to take, where you're going to do them, and you really will see where you have time available.
Right. Well, let's talk a little bit more about that. Do you have any ideas on how people can structure their workday to ensure that they're working efficiently?
Well, like we said, make a plan. So I think we've talked a lot about the different tools you can use. So you figure out the one that works best for you. So if you have deadlines, you need to make sure that you have reminders over time about the deadlines. I feel like this is a big issue, especially for the long-term deadlines. Those 8 weeks go by really quick and you haven't been doing work over time for this assignment. So if it is an 8-week thing that once a week you have a reminder pop up, have you done this part of it?
Right. And I think also if it's an 8-week long project that someone's given to you, you probably want to have some checkpoints at the middle of the semester to check in with them, make sure that's the direction they're looking for. You don't want to produce something that you've done in a mad rush over the last few days of the summer. And there's like, this is not at all what I wanted you to do.
And you may need to put those in place.
Right.
Because a lot of times the assigning attorney won't think about deadlines. They'll just assume that you're going to check in or you're doing it at the right pace. So you may need to suggest, oh, can we have a midpoint check-in? And they're going to say yes.
Right.
Generally, they're not going to have a problem with it. But the thing is, it will be on you if you get to the end and you say, well, they didn't suggest anything and it turns out I did it all wrong. Well,
too bad.
Yeah. And that includes pro bono projects. Those are a lot of the projects that I've noticed do take up the whole summer. It's kind of a big memo you're writing or, some type of assignment. And it's sort of a summer-long project. And so it's great if you can figure out where, the different deadlines should be.
Yeah, and I think the first step is you map out the project for yourself and you say, okay, I need to get X, Y, and Z done by these dates. And then hopefully you get them done. And then you can have a check-in that says, okay, I've done X, Y, and Z. I just wanted to run all this by you. Can we have a quick meeting about this? And of course, people are going to say yes.
They're going to love that.
Yeah. And if they don't, again, if they say no and things go badly, then at least you have the paper trail of I tried to set up a meeting with them and they didn't do it.
Totally. And again, I think this is a chance to use the resources of the people who are available to you because there is usually somebody, whether it's an associate or somebody else at the firm who's, in charge of you a little as a summer, that you can check in and get some feedback from them or ask their suggestions. So
Right.
ask for help if you need it. That's what they're there for.
Yeah, and say that you asked for the meeting and the person's like, I'm too busy, I'm at trial. Then you can go to the person who's there to help you and say, well, this is a situation, I'd really love to like get some feedback on this before I continue. And then that person can either call up the attorney and say, look, you really need to talk to this person. Or they can say, okay, cool, we'll find somebody else.
Exactly. And usually no one's offended about that.
No, I mean, people get busy. It's just a thing.
Exactly. And the thing is, sometimes these assignments do get dropped by the person that gave it to you.
Right.
It's not always your fault. And that part you can't control. I think what you can control is how you handle it. So that's what we're trying to explain is it's sort of judgment aside from actually the assignments.
Right. And also, like you said earlier, you don't want to be that person who every single day is like reaching out to the attorney and being like, have you looked at this yet? Have you looked at this yet? Have you looked at this yet? Because they're going to be like, oh my gosh, I have real work to do. Please go away.
And that's the kind of behavior that really could get you no offered.
Right.
Because they're going to think I don't want to work with this person.
Right. Like this person is driving me crazy over this trivial thing when I'm working 18 hours a day at a trial in some random place. You've got to use your judgment here.
Yeah. And a lot of times with the partners, there will be an associate in between that you can go to. That's sort of their go-to. And usually that person's really used to it.
Yeah, exactly. They understand the situation. They know it's not really your fault. They're used to taking the dump from above and processing it for the people below them. It's kind of their role. Yeah, they always have a right-hand man, basically, or woman.
Yeah, so figure out who that is if you're not sure.
Right. And like that person might even have a right-hand person. You just need to work your way down the chain until you get somebody who is lower level enough that they have time to actually talk to you as needed.
And that might be a paralegal. A lot of times they are kind of the person who knows that partner really well and will be like, this is how they like you to do it.
Exactly. Like, here's a sample. This is what they're looking for. Let me know if you need help on it.
Exactly.
There's somebody who knows the answer. You just have to find that person.
And speaking of samples, they do expect you to try to find that. They're not necessarily just going to give you anything. They expect you to put in the legwork to have looked. So if you go and say there isn't anything, and then they find it, it's really embarrassing.
Right. And any law practice at this point, I'm sure, has a document management system. Yeah. And again, you can ask questions to people, maybe not the person who gave you the assignment, but if you don't know how to search that, it's the sort of thing where you probably want something that's on this client, if possible, or at least this partner, the way they want to do it. But again, there will definitely be people who know how to use the system and what people are looking for.
And speaking of that, that is probably going to be something that came up in your orientation that you were not really paying attention to. Orientation is really important. They're actually going to give you answers that you need later. So even the stuff that seems boring probably is there for a reason.
No, and I think people misunderstand or don't appreciate how important it is to have a really clear, good understanding and ability to use document management systems. Because if people cannot find something, say that you've gone back to school and you're living your life and you've done some work for them and you've put something in the wrong place and nobody can find it, like that is just not making you look good.
Exactly. I agree.
All right. Well, before we wrap up, what are some roadblocks you've seen to working efficiently for summer interns or other young lawyers?
Well, I think a lot of it stems from communication. So not asking the questions like we talked about, when you start an assignment and spending a lot of times on things that are not important and not focusing on what they're really looking for. I also think, especially in some of these big law jobs, you kind of don't make the work your priority and you're kind of having fun with all this like free stuff you're getting and fancy meals and going out for drinks and all of that. And that's important. But they actually do want to see what your work looks like, and they want to see that you're going to figure out how to be an associate, even though you're probably not doing as much work as you will be then. So you do want to show that you understand this is a job first, and all of that fun stuff is second. So when we talked about non-negotiables plus negotiables, you need to look at what that is. And like I said, I think the number one is kind of not being aware of deadlines. And I think those longer projects are a real killer. That is the number one thing I've seen people drop the ball on, something that they had the entire summer to do, and then they somehow never turn it in.
That's
and
such
that
a
is
mess.
a no offer. You can't give an offer to someone like that. And they We'll try to blame somebody else that they didn't have deadlines. Some of these assignments are group projects or you're working with somebody else. And obviously that is a challenge, but they want to know you can work as a team.
Right. And if
So make
something's
sure.
Yeah, and if it's not going well, if they've paired you up, say, on a pro bono case with somebody else and that person is not doing what they need to be doing, that's something you need to know how to manage.
Yeah, I think that would be an issue that would come up a lot. And that probably will come up in law school when you're working with somebody on something.
It's like universal. But all of these are life skills, basically. I think if you take away nothing else, take away the fact that a lot of these things that you're going to have to learn how to do in the summer are actually great life skills.
Exactly. This is kind of your opportunity to figure out how to make this work the best that it can. So, in terms of all of this, the worst case scenario is you not finishing something that you were supposed to finish, especially something that's not like a made up assignment for a summer associate, but a real assignment. And then an associate or a partner needs to finish it for you.
So bad.
That is the absolute worst scenario out of all of this. And it's way worse than, oh, I had to work 2 weekends, to dig myself out of this hole. That is something they will never forget.
Right. I think the other thing I would really flag is not understanding the question or the desired outcome and wasting time on irrelevant research. So you might have been, your eyes might have glazed over in your first year civil procedure class when you were talking about Erie, or maybe your class never talked about Erie. But the point is, it matters which jurisdiction you are in when you're looking for law. Are you in a state court? Or are you in a federal court? That makes a huge difference. In some cases, the people giving you the assignment might just assume that you understand because you're in the Southern District of New York that you need to look for certain types of cases. You should always make sure that you know. But I've had people that I gave assignments to, and I remember them. And I was very clear on what cases we needed from what jurisdictions. And they came back with stuff from like a state court. And I'm like, this is not helpful. You've just spent 3 days on something that I told you not to do. And it is utterly useless. And now I have to do that research. I wasn't happy.
And it sounds like you still remember.
I do remember. I remember that conversation where I was like, are you kidding me right now? Now we're 3 days closer to the deadline and I have nothing to work with and you've wasted all this time.
And if you're not sure, ask the question.
Right.
It sounds like you told them exactly. Let's say the person didn't tell you exactly. That is something you need to ask.
Right. If nothing else, you can just say, oh, I just want to confirm that we're looking for federal cases in this jurisdiction. And at worst, they're going to be like, yeah, duh. Of course. But
that seems way better than doing it wrong.
Totally. That's 1,000 times, million times better than you not asking the question and coming back days later with pointless research.
Yeah, that's bad.
It was really so bad. So don't do that. So make sure you understand exactly what you're being asked for and don't waste time on things that you're not asked to do. It's kind of like taking a law school exam. Answer the question.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, any final thoughts you'd like to share on this?
My final thought actually goes back to not the assignment, but the idea that certain things are non-negotiables that you may not realize. So make sure that anything that is scheduled into the summer program you are doing, because that is part of managing your schedule. So it also will make you not look good if you didn't go to the firm-wide big summer dinner.
Right.
Because you said you had to finish something. See, that doesn't make you look good either, even if you did have to finish it, because they'll think, well, this should have been on their schedule and they should have finished it around this.
Right. You should have planned for this.
Yeah. So make sure that that is all factored in, that all of those things are part of getting to know you. And if you only go to half the events, that's a reason that you could get no offered.
Right. And I guess the other thing I would say right at the very end is just assume things are going to take longer than you think. So if you think something's going to take 30 minutes, maybe double it when you put it on your schedule for an hour and then see how long it really took. Because it's probably going to be closer to that hour.
That's such a good idea.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. With that, we are out of time. For more career help and the opportunity to work one-on-one with us, you can check out careerdicta.com. Thanks for watching, and please give us a like and subscribe. See you soon.